February 26, 1945. The morning broke cold and grey over Elsdorf, a small town in Germany's Rhineland region. Staff Sergeant Nicholas Mashlonik sat in the commander's position of his M26 Pershing tank, watching smoke curl from burning buildings ahead. His crew had been awake since 0400, their breath fogging the cramped interior as they waited for orders to advance. The Pershing, officially designated T-26E3, before its rushed redesignation just weeks earlier, was so new that its paint still smelled of the factory. Mashlonik's tank was one of only 20 such vehicles in all of Europe. 20 tanks to challenge an enemy that had spent 5 years perfecting the art of armoured warfare. At 06:15, the radio crackled. A Tiger tank, the report said, was rampaging through Elsdorf's eastern quarter. Not a Panzer IV, not a Panther, a Tiger. The word itself carried weight. For 3 years, Tigers had been the spectre haunting every Allied tank crew, from North Africa to Normandy. 57 tons of Krupp steel wrapped around an 88mm cannon that could punch through a Sherman's frontal armour from 2,000 yards. The Tiger's reputation wasn't propaganda, it was mathematics written in burned-out hulls and casualty reports. Mashlonik ordered his driver forward. The Pershing rolled through Elsdorf's rubble-choked streets, its 46 tons compressing cobblestones into gravel. Ahead, at approximately 1,000 yards, the Tiger emerged from behind a damaged apartment building. Even at that distance, the German tank looked massive, its angular hull and cylindrical turret unmistakable. For a moment, both crews hesitated, each sizing up this unexpected encounter. Then the Tiger's gun traversed toward the American tank. But something was different this time. Mashlonik wasn't commanding a Sherman with its inadequate 75mm gun. He had a Pershing with a 90mm M3 cannon, a weapon that fired a 24-pound projectile at 2,650 feet per second. The mathematics had changed. Mashlonik shouted orders. His gunner, already tracking the target, waited for the command. The first struck the Tiger's frontal hull, the second hit near the turret ring, the third penetrated the driver's vision port, and the fourth silenced the German tank completely. The entire engagement lasted less than 90 seconds. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. What Mashlonik and his crew had just accomplished represented something larger than a single tank duel. It represented the collision of two parallel narratives that had been building since 1943. The first narrative was German, the belief, carefully cultivated through experience and propaganda, that their heavy tanks were tactically and technologically invincible. The second was American, the dawning realization that they had sent men to fight Tigers and Panthers with inadequate tools, and the frantic effort to correct that deficiency before more lives were wasted. To understand why the M26 Pershing mattered, you must first understand what made the Tiger tanks so psychologically devastating. It wasn't just their armour or firepower, it was the certainty they represented. When a Tiger appeared on the battlefield, Allied tankers knew with mathematical precision that they were outmatched. A Sherman crew engaging a Tiger frontally faced a simple calculus. Their 75mm gun could not penetrate the Tiger's frontal armour at any practical combat range, while the Tiger could destroy a Sherman from distances exceeding 2,000 yards. This wasn't my opinion. It was physics. The Tiger I, introduced to combat in North Africa during late 1942, carried 100mm of frontal armour and an 88mm KWK 36 litres, 56 cannon. British and American tests in 1943 confirmed what battlefield reports had suggested standard Allied tank guns were ineffective against it. The British 6-pounder anti-tank gun could penetrate the Tiger's frontal armour only under ideal conditions at point-blank range. The American 75mm gun on the Sherman couldn't penetrate it at all from the front. Then, in July of 1944, came the Tiger II, called the Königstiger by the Germans, King Tiger by the British, and Royal Tiger in American intelligence reports. If the Tiger I had been daunting, the Tiger II was meant to be invincible. Nearly 70 tons of steel protected by armor ranging from 100 mm to 185 mm on the frontal glacis. Its 88 mm KWK 43 liters, 71 gun, note that longer barrel, 71 calibers versus the Tiger IIs 56, could penetrate any Allied tank's frontal armor from ranges exceeding 2.5 kilometers. That's 1.5 miles. Allied tank crews were being asked to close to within a few hundred yards to have any hope of a killing shot, while German gunners could destroy them from distances where they appeared as mere shapes on the horizon. The psychological impact was devastating. First Lieutenant Edwin Leiper of the 3rd Armored Division recorded in his after-action report from December 1944. When word came that Tigers were in the sector, 3 of my tank commanders requested immediate mechanical inspections. There was nothing wrong with their tanks. They simply did not want to face a Tiger in a Sherman. This wasn't cowardice. It was rational self-preservation in the face of overwhelming technical disadvantage. The mathematics of tank combat are brutally simple. Armor penetration depends on 3 factors: the kinetic energy of the projectile, the angle at which it strikes, and the quality of the armor it must defeat. The Sherman's M3 75mm gun fired an armor-piercing M61 projectile, weighing 15 pounds at a muzzle velocity of 2,030 feet per second. Against homogeneous steel armor at a 90-degree impact angle, this projectile could penetrate approximately 68 mm at 1,000 yards. The Tiger II's frontal armor was 100 mm thick and sloped at 9 degrees. The Tiger II's was 150 mm thick, sloped at 50 degrees. No amount of courage or tactical brilliance could overcome that disparity. American tank crews developed desperate tactics. The preferred method for engaging a Tiger was to maneuver multiple Shermans into flanking positions, accepting that 1 or 2 would likely be destroyed while trying to get shots against the Tiger's thinner side and rear armor, 80 mm on the Tiger I, 80 mm on the Tiger II. Some units experimented with coordinated attacks, where 3 or 4 Shermans would charge a Tiger simultaneously from different angles, gambling that at least one would survive long enough to land a killing shot. Others relied on artillery support, tank destroyers, or airstrikes, anything except a direct tank versus tank engagement. The Germans understood the psychological advantage they possessed. Tank commander Kurt Knispel, who served with the 503rd Heavy Tank Battalion, later described the tactics. We would position our Tigers on a ridgeline or at the edge of a tree line, hull down, so only the turret was visible. At that range, 1,500 to 2,000 meters, the American Shermans looked like toys. We could destroy them before they could even identify what was shooting at them. Often, entire American platoons would withdraw after losing just 1 or 2 tanks because they knew they could not win. This wasn't universal. Not every Tiger engagement ended in German victory. Tigers were mechanically unreliable, fuel-hungry, and slow. Their weight, 57 tons for the Tiger I, nearly 70 for the Tiger II, meant they often could not cross bridges or navigate soft ground. They required constant maintenance. A Tiger battalion of 45 tanks might have only 20 to 25 operational at any given time, but when Tigers were operational and properly positioned, they were devastatingly effective. By early 1945, Tiger units claimed to be destroying Allied tanks at a ratio exceeding 10 to 1. But there's a critical detail often overlooked in discussions of Tiger invincibility. The Germans themselves knew their heavy tanks were not truly invincible. Internal Wehrmacht documents from 1944 reveal a more complex picture. A technical assessment dated August 19, 1944, prepared by the Waffenamt, the German Army Weapons Agency, identified multiple vulnerabilities in both Tiger models. The Tiger II's turret armor, though thick, was not sloped. British 17-pounder guns, firing armor-piercing discarding sabot ammunition, could penetrate it at ranges exceeding 1,000 yards under certain conditions. The Tiger II's earlier turret design, sometimes incorrectly called the Porsche turret, featured a curved front with a pronounced shot trap that could deflect shells downward into the thin roof armor. More critically, both Tigers shared a fundamental vulnerability that no amount of armor could address: Their weight made them strategic liabilities. A Tiger II consumed 800 litres of fuel per 100 kilometres of road travel, more under combat conditions. In 1945, with Allied air power interdicting German fuel supplies and destroying refineries, this meant Tiger units were often immobilized not by enemy action but by empty fuel tanks. When Soviet forces captured 2 Tiger IIs near Sandomierz in August of 1944 for testing, both tanks suffered mechanical breakdowns during the short transfer to the Kubinka proving grounds. One required complete replacement of its right suspension. Soviet engineers noted that the cooling system was inadequate for the engine's heat output, causing frequent overheating. Yet despite these limitations, the Tiger's psychological dominance remained. This was partly because the Germans were highly selective about when and where they committed their heavy tanks. Tiger battalions were not used for exploitation or pursuit. That was the role of Panther and Panzer IV units. Tigers were committed at critical points, often in defensive positions where their long-range firepower could cover open terrain. This selective employment maximized their impact while minimizing exposure to their vulnerabilities. By February of 1945, the situation had become critical for the Americans. The Battle of the Bulge, in December of 1944, had exposed just how unprepared American armor was for concentrated German tank attacks. The German offensive deployed approximately 400 Panther tanks along with dozens of Tiger IIs and Tiger IIs. American Sherman crews found themselves facing tanks they simply could not defeat frontally. After-action reports from the battle make grim reading. One battalion commander reported losing 17 Shermans in a single engagement with German armor, destroying only 3 German tanks in return, and those 3 were Panzer IVs, not Tigers or Panthers. The debate about American tank doctrine had been raging since 1943. Why had the United States not developed a heavy tank comparable to the Tiger or Panther? The answer was not incompetence or ignorance. It was doctrine specifically, the tank destroyer doctrine, championed by Lieutenant General Leslie McNair, commanding general of Army Ground Forces. McNair believed that tanks should not fight other tanks. Tanks, in his view, were exploitation vehicles meant to break through enemy lines and raid deep into the late rear areas. Tank destroyers lighter, faster vehicles with powerful guns would handle enemy armor. This doctrine had a certain logic in theory. It was efficient. Tank destroyers, like the M26, armed with 90mm guns, could be produced more quickly and cheaply than heavy tanks. Why build a 46-ton tank when a 30-ton tank destroyer could carry the same gun? The problem was that doctrine and reality diverged on the battlefield. German tanks did not politely wait in designated positions for tank destroyers to engage them. They attacked American tank units, forcing Shermans into direct tank versus tank combat they were not equipped to win. Development of what would become the M26 Pershing began in earnest during 1942 and 1943. The T-20 series prototypes explored various combinations of armor, weaponry, and automotive components. By 1943, the T-26E3 prototype emerged a 46-ton tank with a 90mm M3 gun, mounted in a large cast turret, protected by up to 102mm of frontal armor. It was everything McNair's doctrine opposed: heavy, specialized for tank versus tank combat, and expensive to produce. McNair blocked production. In September of 1943, when the Army Ordnance Department proposed manufacturing 250 T-26E3 tanks, McNair argued that improved Shermans armed with 76mm guns would be sufficient. This was not an unreasonable position given the information available in 1943. The 76mm gun offered substantially better armor penetration than the 75mm, and fitting it to the Sherman chassis was faster and cheaper than developing an entirely new tank. What McNair and others failed to anticipate was how quickly German tank development would accelerate, and how many Panthers and Tigers would ultimately be deployed. It took intervention at the highest levels to overcome McNair's opposition. Lieutenant General Jacob Devers, commanding general of the European Theatre of Operations, witnessed the inadequacy of American armor firsthand during fighting in France. In December of 1943, Devers went over McNair's head directly to Army Chief of Staff, General George Marshall. Marshall, recognizing that soldiers' lives were at stake, overruled McNair and authorized production of 250 T-26E3 tanks. Manufacturing orders were placed in January of 1944, but authorization and production are different things. The T-26E3 was not a simple vehicle to manufacture. Its cast hull and turret required specialized foundry equipment. Its wider tracks meant retooling production lines. Its more powerful engine and transmission had to be sourced and integrated. The first pilot model emerged from the Fisher tank arsenal in November of 1944. 10 more were produced that month, 30 in December, 70 in January of 1945. The production pace was accelerating, but the war was not waiting. By February of 1945, only 43 T-26E3 tanks had reached Europe. On March 9th, the designation was officially changed to M26, and the tanks received the name Pershing after General John J. Pershing, commander of American forces in the First World War. But names and official designations mattered less than the urgent question facing American commanders. Could these new tanks actually stand up to German armor, or was this just another costly experiment? The M26's specifications looked promising on paper. Its 90mm M3 gun was broadly equivalent to the Tiger IIs 88mm WWII-36. Both guns fired projectiles of similar weight at similar velocities. Against the Tiger I, this put the Pershing on roughly equal footing, something no previous American tank could claim. But the Tiger II was another matter. Its KWK, 43 litres, 71 was substantially more powerful than the M3. Firing standard APC-BC ammunition, the Tiger II's gun could penetrate 165mm of vertical armor at 1,000 meters. The Pershing's M3, firing standard M82 APC-BC ammunition, could penetrate 119mm under the same conditions. The Pershing was better, significantly better than the Sherman, but still outgunned by the Tiger II. This reality worried American ordnance officers. If the Pershing was not superior to the best German tanks, was it worth the industrial effort? Was it worth pulling resources away from Sherman production, which had reached nearly 2,000 tanks per month? These questions were academic for the tank crews who would have to fight in whatever vehicles they were given, but they shaped the decisions about how many Pershings would ultimately be built and where they would be deployed. The first M26 Pershings sent to Europe were distributed to 2 units, the 3rd Armoured Division and the 9th Armoured Division. 3rd Armoured received its first Pershings in late January, the 9th in early February. The tanks arrived with minimal technical documentation, no spare parts inventory, and crews who had never trained on them. Maintenance personnel had to learn Pershing's automotive systems through trial and error. Loaders had to adapt to handling the 90mm ammunition, which at 24 pounds per projectile was substantially heavier than the Sherman's ammunition. Gunners had to learn new sight pictures and range estimation with an unfamiliar gun. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. The crews adapted quickly, driven by the knowledge that their lives might depend on it. Staff Sergeant Early V. Morrison, a gunner in the 3rd Armoured, later described the transition. We had 5 days to familiarize ourselves with the Pershing before our first combat operation. 5 days to learn a completely different tank. The turret traverse was faster than the Sherman. The gun recoiled differently. The ammunition stowage was in different positions. But we had something we'd never had before, confidence that if we saw a German tank, we might actually be able to destroy it without getting ourselves killed in the process. That confidence was about to be tested. On February 25, 1945, elements of the 3rd Armoured Division advanced toward the Ruhr River as part of Operation Grenade, the Allied push to close on the Rhine River. Among the attacking force were 6 M26 Pershings, the first commitment of the new tanks to combat. Their mission was to provide fire support for the infantry assault crossing the Ruhr, suppressing German strongpoints and engaging any enemy armor that appeared. At approximately 1500 hours, one of the Pershings, nicknamed Fireball, and commanded by Sergeant Early Morrison, advanced to a road intersection in the town of Elsdorf to establish an overwatch position. Morrison positioned his tank where it could cover the main avenue leading into the town, providing security for infantry units moving up behind. What happened next would become one of the most debated engagements of the European campaign, the first time an M26 Pershing exchanged fire with German armor under combat conditions. A Tiger tank, concealed approximately 100 yards away near a burning building, fired 3 shots in rapid succession. The first shell struck Fireball's turret, penetrating through the machine gun port in the mantlet. Both the gunner and loader were killed instantly. The second shot hit the gun barrel, detonating the round already chambered and distorting the barrel so badly that the weapon was rendered useless. The third shot, for reasons never determined, failed to penetrate, possibly striking at an oblique angle or hitting a portion of the turret where additional armor plating overlapped. Fireball's remaining crew, including Morrison, abandoned the burning tank. The engagement lasted less than 60 seconds. Fireball was knocked out the first M26. Pershing lost in combat. The Tiger withdrew before American forces could bring up additional tanks or anti-tank weapons. When recovery teams examined Fireball's wreckage later that day, the implications were sobering. The Tiger's first shot had penetrated exactly where the Pershing's turret armor was, thinnest through the machine gun port, a vulnerability inherent in the design. Had that shot struck 2 inches to either side, it would have ricocheted off the mantlet's thicker armor. But in tank combat, 2 inches is the difference between survival and death. Yet the next day, February 27th, a different story unfolded. Sergeant Nicholas Mashlonik, commanding another Pershing from the same company, advanced into Elsdorf to continue the battle. His mission: locate and destroy the Tiger that had knocked out Fireball. German forces were withdrawing from Elsdorf, but the Tiger and several other armored vehicles remained as a rear guard to delay the American advance. Mashlonik's tank patrol spotted 3 German armored vehicles moving along a road to their right flank, attempting to withdraw from the town. Mashlonik positioned his Pershing to engage. At approximately 1,000 yards, while moving, he ordered his gunner to fire. 4 rapid shots. The first destroyed a Tiger tank that had been dug in at the roadside. The remaining 3 vehicles, which after action reports variously identified as Panzer IVs, Panthers, or tank destroyers, were destroyed in quick succession as they attempted to flee. Mashlonik later recalled, "Just like shooting ducks. And we picked them off one by one." This engagement was critical, not for its tactical significance. 4 German tanks destroyed was useful, but not strategically decisive, but for what it revealed about the Pershing's combat effectiveness. Under the right conditions, with trained crews and proper positioning, the M26 could engage German armor on equal or superior terms. The Tiger's invincibility was not absolute. It depended on factors: range, positioning, crew training, surprise, and increasingly, by February of 1945, the deteriorating quality of German crews and the declining availability of ammunition and fuel. But one question remained unanswered. Could the Pershing defeat a Tiger II, not a Tiger I, but the heavier King Tiger with its thicker armor and more powerful gun? The only way to know for certain was through combat, and that opportunity would come, though under disputed circumstances, in April of 1945. The engagement reports from Elsdorf created ripples through American command structures. Within 72 hours, copies of Mashlonik's after-action report reached General Courtney Hodges at 1st Army Headquarters, then General Omar Bradley at 12th Army Group, and finally Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force. The message was clear. The M26 Pershing could fight German heavy armor and win. But one successful engagement against a Tiger, I did not answer the more pressing question: what would happen when a Pershing faced a Tiger II? By March 15, 1945, the number of operational Pershings in Europe had grown to 32 tanks distributed among 3 armoured divisions. The 3rd Armoured Division had 14, the 9th Armoured Division had 12, and the 2nd Armoured Division had just received 6. Production at Fisher Tank, Arsenal had accelerated to 120 tanks per month, but transportation bottlenecks meant that tanks manufactured in February often didn't reach frontline units until April. The Pershings were arriving, but they were arriving slowly, and the war was moving faster. The Rhine crossings in late March changed everything. Operation Plunder, the British and Canadian, crossing north of the Ruhr, commenced on March 23rd. The American crossing at Remagen had already established a bridgehead 2 weeks earlier, when elements of the 9th Armoured Division captured the Ludendorff Bridge intact on March 7th. Now, with multiple crossings secured, Allied armour was pouring into Germany's industrial heartland. The German army, once the master of armoured warfare, was fragmenting into isolated battle groups with diminishing fuel, ammunition, and coordination. But fragmenting did not mean defeated. Tiger II battalions, though reduced to skeleton strength, remained potent threats when properly deployed. The 500th 6th Heavy Tank Battalion, operating in the Ruhr pocket, still fielded 8 operational Tiger IIs as of March 28. The 500th 7th, defending approaches to Berlin, had 11. These units were no longer capable of offensive operations, but in defensive positions, a single Tiger II with adequate ammunition could still hold an entire road junction against numerically superior forces. Lieutenant Bob Early of the 3rd Armoured Division's 33rd Armoured Regiment recorded his first sight of a Tiger II in his diary entry from March 31st. Massive doesn't begin to describe it. We spotted it at approximately 1,800 yards, hull down behind an earthen berm at the edge of a village whose name I never learned and don't remember. Even at that range, you could see this was something different from the Tiger IIs we'd been encountering. Longer gun barrel, more angular turret. Our company commander called up the Pershings, we had 2 with us, and ordered the Shermans to hold position and provide supporting fire only. Nobody argued with that order. The engagement that followed was anticlimactic. The Tiger II fired 3 shots at extreme range, all missing. The 2 Pershings manoeuvred to flank the German position, while Sherman tanks suppressed the supporting infantry with machine gun, fire, and high explosive rounds. When the Pershings gained clear sight lines to the Tiger's side armour, they fired a total of 7 rounds between them. At least 3 penetrated, starting fires that forced the German crew to abandon the vehicle. Total engagement time, approximately 8 minutes. The Tiger II's theoretical invincibility had meant nothing when tactical circumstances prevented it from bringing its superior gun to bear effectively. But this engagement, like Maschlonick's at Elsdorf, did not definitively answer the central question. In a straight frontal engagement at medium range, could a Pershing's 90mm gun penetrate a Tiger II's frontal armour? The mathematics suggested it was possible but not certain. The Tiger II's frontal glacis was 150mm thick at a 50-degree angle. The effective thickness, accounting for the slope, exceeded 200mm. The Pershing's M82 APCBC round could penetrate 119mm of vertical armour at 1,000 meters. Against sloped armour, that figure dropped significantly. American ordnance experts estimated that a Pershing would need to close to within 500 yards, maybe less, to have a reliable chance of a frontal penetration against a Tiger II. 500 yards. That was still better than the Sherman's effective range of 0 yards, but it meant Pershing crews would have to absorb at least 1, possibly 2 or 3 Tiger II shots while closing the distance. Given that the Tiger II's gun could penetrate the Pershing's frontal armour at ranges exceeding 1,500 yards, this was not a favourable exchange rate. The answer came not from a single engagement, but from a series of encounters during the first 2 weeks of April, as American armour drove deeper into central Germany. The most significant occurred near Desau, on the Elbe River, on April 21, 1945. The 33rd Armoured Regiment of the 3rd Armoured Division had been tasked with securing a crossing site over the Elbe River as part of the drive toward Leipzig. Intelligence reports indicated light German resistance, scattered infantry units, and perhaps some self-propelled guns, but no heavy armour. The intelligence was wrong. Blocking the approaches to the bridge at Desau was a composite battle group built around 3 Tiger IIs from the 507th 7th Heavy Tank Battalion, supported by infantry and several Jagdpanzer IV tank destroyers. Staff Sergeant Robert Early commanded one of 3 Pershings assigned to the lead task force. His tank, nicknamed Eagle 7, rolled through the outskirts of Desau at approximately 07:30 hours, advancing cautiously through streets still smoking from the previous night's artillery bombardment. Early's orders were to secure the western approach to the bridge, establish radio contact with reconnaissance elements already in the town, and hold position until infantry could clear the surrounding buildings. What happened next is documented in multiple after-action reports, verified by gun camera footage from P-47 Thunderbolts providing air support, and corroborated by German sources after the war. At approximately 0800 hours, Eagle 7 rounded a corner and found itself facing a Tiger II positioned at the far end of a long, straight boulevard range estimated at 1,600 yards. Both tanks spotted each other simultaneously. Both commanders made instant calculations about angle, range, and armor penetration. Both gunners prepared to fire. The Tiger II fired first. Its 88mm round covered 1,600 yards in less than 2 seconds. The shot struck Eagle 7's glacis plate at a slight angle, ricocheted upward, and screamed over the turret. Early's gunner returned fire immediately, no time to aim precisely, just point and shoot before the Tiger could correct its range. The 90mm round struck the Tiger II's mantlet and penetrated, though barely. The German tank's gun remained operational, but internal damage forced the crew to bail out within seconds. Behind Eagle 7, 2 more Pershings from the same platoon had taken positions at intersecting streets, creating overlapping fields of fire. When the second Tiger II appeared, attempting to flank the Americans' position, it faced 3 90mm guns simultaneously. 6 rounds were fired in rapid succession. At least 2 penetrated the Tiger's turret at a range of approximately 1,200 yards. The third Tiger II never entered the engagement. Its commander, recognizing the tactical situation was untenable, withdrew deeper into Desau, where narrow streets would negate the Pershing's range advantage. The engagement lasted approximately 6 minutes. 2 Tiger IIs destroyed, 1 Pershing damaged but repairable, no American casualties. But the significance extended beyond the immediate tactical result. For the first time, American tank crews had engaged Tiger IIs frontally at medium to long range and prevailed without sustaining catastrophic losses. The mathematics that had governed tank warfare since 1943, the cold certainty that German heavy tanks could destroy Allied tanks at ranges where return fire was ineffective, had shifted. But Desau was not the end of the story. It was, in many ways, the beginning of a legend that would grow larger than the actual events. Post-war accounts, particularly those published in the 1950s and 60s, transformed the April encounters between Pershings and Tiger IIs into decisive confrontations that supposedly demonstrated overwhelming American technological superiority. These accounts often cited a single statistic: 7 Tiger IIs destroyed by Pershings at ranges exceeding 2,000 yards. That specific claim requires examination. Between February 26 and May 8, 1945, from the first Pershing combat engagement to Germany's surrender, American forces documented 15 separate encounters between M26 Pershings and Tiger II tanks. Of these 15 engagements, 7 resulted in Tiger II losses attributed to Pershing gunfire. However, the ranges at which these destructions occurred varied considerably. The longest confirmed kill was at Desau, 1,600 yards, not 2,000. The shortest was in a village whose name was never properly recorded, where a Pershing destroyed a Tiger II from approximately 300 yards while the German tank was backing out of a barn. The 7 at 2,000 yards claim appears to be a conflation of 2 separate statistics: 7 total Tiger II kills, and the maximum theoretical engagement range of 2,000 yards at which a Pershing could potentially damage a Tiger II. This conflation, while technically misleading, reflects something psychologically important. By April of 1945, American tank crews needed to believe that their new tanks could defeat anything the Germans fielded. The Pershing's actual performance, capable but not dominant, effective but not overwhelming, was less satisfying than the legend of a superweapon that could destroy Tigers from extreme range. The reality was more nuanced. The Pershing was not a superweapon. It was a competent, heavy tank that arrived late in the war, deployed in insufficient numbers, and achieved modest tactical success. Its greatest contribution was not the number of German tanks it destroyed, though that number was significant, but rather the psychological impact it had on both American and German tank crews. For American tankers, the Pershing represented validation. It proved that the United States could design and produce a tank comparable to the best German vehicles. It demonstrated that American industry, when properly motivated, could match or exceed German engineering. Most importantly, it showed that American tank crews did not have to face technical inferiority in addition to all the other hazards of armored combat. Sergeant Morrison, whose gunner training on the Pershing had been compressed into 5 days, later wrote, "The Pershing didn't make us invincible, but it made us equal. That was all we'd ever asked for." For German crews, the Pershing's appearance marked a turning point. Otto Carius, one of Germany's most successful tank commanders with more than 150 confirmed kills, encountered Pershings near Köslin in late April. His account, published decades after the war, is revealing. "We had become accustomed to a certain comfort in engagements with American armor. The Shermans were predictable. We knew their capabilities and limitations intimately. When the first Pershing appeared in my sector, we initially mistook it for a Panther. The profile was similar. When it fired and the shell penetrated my wingman's Tiger at 1,300 meters, we realized this was something new. It wasn't superior to our Tigers, but it was close enough to eliminate our margin for error." That phrase, "eliminate our margin for error," captures the essential change the Pershing represented. German heavy tanks had operated with comfortable performance margins throughout most of the war. A Tiger could afford to miss its first shot, because a Sherman's return fire was unlikely to penetrate. A Panther could engage multiple Shermans simultaneously, because the odds of a Sherman getting a lucky shot were acceptably low. The Pershing removed that margin. Every engagement now carried real risk. Every shot had to count. The mathematical certainty that had sustained German tank crews through years of fighting against numerically superior but technologically inferior opponents had evaporated. But by April of 1945, this technical shift mattered less than it would have a year earlier. Germany was collapsing. Fuel shortages immobilized entire tank battalions. Ammunition shortages meant that Tiger crews sometimes went into battle with only 10 to 15 main gun rounds, barely enough for a single engagement. The Luftwaffe had been driven from the skies, leaving German armor vulnerable to constant air attack. The tactical situations where a Tiger II's superior gun range could be brought to bear were increasingly rare as fighting shifted to urban terrain and confused meeting engagements where range meant nothing and surprise meant everything. The final recorded engagement between a Pershing and a Tiger II occurred on May 4, 1945, near Pilsen in Czechoslovakia. Lieutenant William McVeigh's Pershing encountered a Tiger II that had been abandoned by its crew after running out of fuel. The Tiger was blocking a road junction that American forces needed to secure. McVeigh's crew approached cautiously, weapons ready, uncertain whether the Tiger was truly abandoned or merely feigning immobility. When no response came after several minutes of observation, McVeigh ordered his driver forward. His crew placed demolition charges on the Tiger's hull and destroyed it without firing a shot. This anticlimactic end to the Pershing versus Tiger II duels reflects the reality of armored warfare in the war's final weeks. By May of 1945, Germany's armored forces had been ground down not primarily by enemy tanks, but by the cumulative effects of strategic bombing, fuel shortages, broken supply lines, and the simple mathematics of attrition. The Tiger II, designed to be the ultimate evolution of the heavy tank concept, spent more time immobilized by mechanical failure or fuel exhaustion than actually fighting. When the war ended on May 8, 99 M26 Pershings had reached European battlefields. They had destroyed an estimated 30 to 40 German tanks of all types, including at least 7 Tiger IIs and perhaps a dozen Panthers. They had lost approximately 20 tanks to all causes: enemy action, mechanical failure, and accidents. This was a favorable exchange ratio, but not dramatically superior to that achieved by experienced Sherman crews or by the M36 tank destroyers that had been engaging German armor since the previous autumn. The Pershing's legacy, however, extends beyond these statistics. It represented the United States' recognition that tank design mattered, that American soldiers deserved equipment comparable to that of their enemies, and that industrial capacity alone could not compensate for technical inadequacy. The debates that raged in 1943 and 1944 about tank doctrine and heavy tank development would shape American armored vehicle design for decades. The M26 would evolve into the M46 pattern, which would fight in Korea. The lessons learned from Pershing development would inform the design of the M47, M48, and eventually the M60, the line of American main battle tanks that would serve through the Cold War. As for the Tiger II, history rendered its verdict with brutal efficiency. Of the approximately 485 Tiger IIs manufactured between January 1944 and March 1945, fewer than 100 were destroyed by enemy tank fire. The rest were abandoned due to mechanical failure, demolished by their own crews to prevent capture, or destroyed by Allied air power. The tank that was supposed to be invincible had been defeated not by superior technology but by logistics, attrition, and the overwhelming industrial capacity of the Allied coalition. The men who crewed these tanks, American and German alike, understood something that post-war analysis often missed. Tank combat was never purely about technical specifications. It was about crew training, tactical positioning, maintenance, supply, intelligence, and increasingly by 1945, simple luck. The Pershing gave American crews a better tool, and that mattered. But it was the crews themselves, their courage, their skill, and their willingness to engage enemy armor despite overwhelming disadvantages for most of the war that ultimately determined the outcome of these steel encounters on Europe's battlefields. The legend of the Pershing destroying 7 Tiger IIs at 2,000 yards lives on because it represents something Americans needed to believe, that their industry, their engineering, and their soldiers could meet and defeat the best the enemy could field. The reality was messier, more complicated, and more human. But in the end, the reality was also more impressive than the legend. American tank crews faced technically superior German armor for 2 years with inadequate equipment, developed tactics to survive and prevail despite that disadvantage, and when finally given a competitive weapon, used it with skill and courage to contribute to Germany's defeat. That story of adaptation, perseverance, and eventual success is more valuable than any myth about superweapons. It's a story worth remembering accurately. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.